if we look at prayer, salah, the word in Arabic it's a word that comes from a root word that means, it can mean a few things. One of them is to burn up. The idea that prayer burns up wrong actions. That is one of the meanings. Another root meaning is a connection, a sila, a connection with God. That prayer is a connection with God. Another idea of the prayer is submission itself, that the prayer is a form of submission. Now the Quran, the idea in the Quran about prayer is that all peoples and all creatures have been given a prayer. If you look in 22:18, 22:18.
Is that a page?
It would be 954. It says, "Have you not seen that all prostrate to Allah? All things that are in the heavens and the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, the hills, the trees, the animals, and a great number among mankind. But a great number are also such as unto whom the chastisement is justly due." So here's an idea that everything is prostrating. Everything is in a state of prostration. The heavens, the earth, the mountains, the trees, that everything is worshiping. This is something in the Quran, it says, everything is glorifying God, but you do not hear its glorification. There's a tradition that the Prophet Muhammad picked up some rocks, pebbles, in his hand, and he held them out. And some of his companions heard the rocks glorifying God. And then he put them away. But so the point is that was an example in the Muslim tradition of the Prophet showing people that everything is in glorification. Now, if you notice, when it gets to man, it changes the way it says. It says, "and a great number from humankind." Now this is where the Quran introduces the idea of free will. Not everybody, unlike the rest of creation, not all of human beings are in a state of awareness. So only a great number of people are even aware. Many people are in heedlessness of prayer itself, or that they should be worshiping. So there's an idea in the Muslim tradition that we as human beings can either be conscious of our praising God, or we're in a type of unconscious state. And this goes back again to the idea everything is in submission, willingly or unwillingly, and also wittingly or unwittingly. From the Muslim perspective, the body is in a state of worship. The heart is in a state of worship. You know, the movement in and out of the heart in Arabic is called qabd and bast in Arabic. Qabd is contraction, bast is expansion. And there are two names from the 99 names of God, al-qabid and al-basit, the contractor and the expander. So the lungs expanding, contracting. The pupils expanding, contracting. The heart expanding, contracting. The body is always moving in a state of expansion, contraction. And this again relates to the two dominant attributes, when I'm going to talk much more about it when we deal with Iman, of majesty and beauty. Majesty is contraction, beauty is expansion. And these are the two dominant qualities or characteristics of creation that are literally displaying for the human being an awareness of God's presence in His creation. So the Muslim is the one who is supposed to, and I'm using Muslim in its ideal sense, in a normative sense, not, the quote-unquote Muslim world. I really want to get out of that idea of, I'm not talking about Algeria or Afghanistan or Iran, or I'm talking about the Quranic view of a Muslim, not how people believe what they believe or their deluded states and things like that. There's crazy people all over the world. I spent a period of time in working in a psych unit, and very interesting. People really believe they're prophets of God. And you watch this guy and he's telling you, he said, look, I've got a message from God. And you say, and he says, and God says that this, and this. And you're in big trouble if you don't believe me. And there's a kind of, I used to listen to these people because that was part of what we were supposed to do. I used to listen to these people, and there was something in me that wanted to say, come on, you're just pulling my leg, right? There was really something in me that just wanted to nudge this person. But after a while, you start realizing they're not pulling your leg. They really do believe this condition. And we have a phenomenal capacity for delusional states. And most of us, and I would include myself, are walking around with our own delusions. We're just simply unaware of them. And I would really recommend a book, if you're interested in this subject, by Gorman, the man who wrote Emotional Intelligence. He has another book that is actually, I think, much better than the first one. The first one became popular, interestingly enough. The second one is not as popular, but it's called False Truths, Vital Lies. Simple Truths. Vital Lies, Simple Truths. The Psychology of Self-Deception. Very interesting book. Because here's somebody who's just looking at now what we know about our brain and our delusional states. And I think that religion is really one of the big opportunities to go into serious delusional states. Goleman. Goleman. It was, and it only became, now it's after his emotional intelligence. See, this is what the publishers do. So a guy writes a book, nobody ever hears about it. Then he writes a bestseller, and suddenly all his old books are in print, right? The market, right? The logic of the market. So, the point being is that when we're talking about Islam, I really don't want to look at this kind of other phenomenon, which is the phenomenon of delusional religious states that are in every tradition. Right? There are people all over walking around believing that they have the truth and nobody else does. And a lot of those people can be quite frightening, especially when they become president of the United States, and then you're in big trouble, right?
He doesn't remember.
He doesn't remember anymore, yeah. But when he was, it was kind of frightening.
His wife died.
So, let's see now. So the human being then is the individual that can either become conscious of the fact that everything is in praise and everything is in glorification and everything is in prostration, or they can be heedless of this fact. The idea then within the Muslim tradition is that Islam is the process of waking up to this reality. And the Prophet Muhammad said, peace be upon him, he said, human beings are asleep, and when they die, they wake up. So there is an idea that we are in a dreamlike state. And I find it really interesting that the word in Arabic for child, which is ghulam, comes from ghulma, which means to lust after, to desire. That a child is a ghulam until they enter into what is called puberty, and the word in Arabic for puberty is ihtalam. The root word comes from a word which means to dream. Now, when you take the root meaning of this ihtalam, it literally means to internalize the dream. If you take the word to reach adulthood, it means to internalize or become aware of the dream. The idea there, I think, is that children are in a dream world. It's a beautiful world that they're in, but they're not aware of the dreamlike nature of the world that they're in. And it's a gift. And actually, from the Muslim point of view, children have no accountability. And the beginning of discernment is about the age of 7, where you begin to take them to account gently. Prior to that, traditionally, the Muslims did not encourage any type of discipline for children before the age of 7. The discipline should be very gentle discipline. The idea is that they literally do not have within them the capacity to restrain themselves from their actions. Now, children, obviously, you'll see, my child's 5 years old, and he's getting a sense of right and wrong. But the idea there is that really, that their brains, you can tell them, don't do this. They'll do it again, oftentimes not because they're disobeying you. And that they might appear to be guilty when you remind them, because suddenly they become aware. But there is a type of forgetfulness that takes place in the child's world because the brain cannot maintain this continuity. And you'll see it, Chilton Pearce talks about this phenomenon when the neural networking is taking place in those first 7 years, that a child at about the age of 2 and 3, the will is developing. And it's a very important time, and what he says, one of the tragic aspects is that the will in children is broken at that age, right? That the parent will literally want to break the will because they see this child rebelling. They see this child saying, me, and no. They learn no, right? It's the first word that children really get in contact with. Very interesting that they do a negation, to negate, which is very important in the Islamic understanding, because the first and primary task of the human being is to negate creation. And this is why the Shahada itself begins with a negation, La ilaha, no God. That the human being must learn to negate before it can learn to affirm. And so the child first learns negation, and then it learns affirmation. And it's interesting that a child, when its will is developing, one of the examples Pearce uses is a child will beeline for something, and the parent or the adult will say, don't touch that. And the child will look at the parent and just keep going. And the parent will interpret that as gross disobedience. What Pearce says is the fact is that his will, the volition, in his very primitive neurosystem, the volition reached critical mass. And at that point, the adult says, don't touch that. And the child's, I can't help myself anymore. It can't stop, you see. And it goes and it does it. Now, we can see that in our own lives as adults, right? There's a point when human beings reach a critical mass. You see the chocolate, and you say, you know, I don't, no, go ahead, just try. Well, I really don't want, go ahead, just try. And then suddenly it gets to critical mass, and that's it. You know, they can't stop. So we see that in adults as well, but in children, it's blameless. Whereas in adults, I think there's, you know, come on, you didn't have to eat it, right?